it's impossible to speak out because these are very, very real sentences, and we know that Russian prison is not like a European prison, so we need to bear it in mind before we sort of think about the situation. I'm sure there are lots of people in Russia who are in disagreement with the current regime, but to speak out essentially means you're going straight to prison.
One of the big revelations today was that the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny was killed using a poison developed from a dart frog toxin. 2 years on from Navalny's death in a Siberian penal colony, Britain and its allies have pinned the blame on the Kremlin following analysis of material samples found on his body. Now, the Foreign Office says that there's no innocent explanation for the toxin being found in samples taken from his body. Let's listen to the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper.
Only the Russian government had the means, the motive and the opportunity to use that toxin against Alexei Navalny in prison. And that is why we are here today, to shine a spotlight on the Kremlin's barbaric attempt to silence Alexei Navalny's voice.
Well, let's now speak to a friend of Alexei Navalny, Tatiana Fokina, who lives in London. She joins me now. Tatiana, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, hello.
What is your reaction to this revelation today?
Well, I think we all knew that Alexei has been killed and possibly has been poisoned. It's great to know with what exactly. Just it gives us more clarity, and it's great that a lot of effort has been put in finding out what exactly happened. And again, I think we always knew that he has been essentially killed by Putin's regime. This is now confirming that, and again, it is a barbaric notion, and the only hope is that there will be some consequences for those in blame for that. And it's very important that the West does not stop at just saying, okay, we now know what happened. But, that there are new things happening every day, and, people get carried away. And I think it's very important for us that there are consequences
and what would you
that follow.
How realistic do you think those consequences will be in terms of what might happen and how Putin's regime may respond to this news?
Obviously, Putin's regime is a law unto themselves, but I just think that the West and all the countries that have been party to the investigation should take into the account that when they deal with Russian government at the moment, they are dealing with not only the government that started a war against Ukraine, but also a government that poisons those in opposition. And I think it's very important to remember that there are thousands of people who are in Russian prisons on political charges, and they're being tortured. And I think it's very important that the West keeps that in mind and does whatever it can to make sure they are released as soon as possible, because, Alexei is the most famous victim of the regime, but there are also hundreds and hundreds of people who are less famous but are suffering.
And for the people left in Russia who are brave enough to challenge Putin's regime, I mean, it must be so difficult for them. I mean, they see this news about Navalny, they see the people being imprisoned as political prisoners and potentially killed and murdered. What's it like being a dissident in Russia?
I'm very fortunate. I'm based in the UK, and I always say this: we all have to bear in mind that those in Russia are so scared, and I think we all would be. And I think Alexei was a symbol of this bravery, sort of insane bravery, because he came back knowing what was going to face him. But those people who are in opposition to the regime but live in Russia and have nowhere to go, no means to leave, we need to understand that they are, they cannot speak out. It's impossible to speak out because these are very, very real sentences, and we know that Russian prison is not like a European prison, so we need to bear it in mind before we sort of think about the situation. I'm sure there are lots of people in Russia who are in disagreement with the current regime, but to speak out essentially means you're going straight to prison. And I think, it's basic human instinct to protect yourselves. And I think, again, the West should be very aware of it, because it's all very fine for us living in the countries where there is freedom of speech, thinking, oh, why didn't they protest? Why didn't they just revolt? Russia's a huge country. Why don't they speak out? But
Of course.
we have to realize it's incredibly scary. And again, we have what has happened in Iran.
Yes, I was just
very
thinking that.
recently.
Yes, I was just thinking that.
Part of me was sort of cheering for them so much, but equally being really scared for them. And I think, again, even what has happened in Iran shows to Russian people this is what can happen. You revolt, and there are 30,000 people dead. It's such a scary thought, and I think we need to really bear that in mind at all times.
Yes, I was, just as you were describing that, my mind was going to the situation in Iran, and I think that's a very, very good, important point. And Tatiana, do you worry for your own safety? I mean, you're in London now. You speak out a lot against the regime. Do you worry yourself?
I'm not in London. Unfortunately, I'm unable to go back to Russia, and it's in the times of Dante, that was the worst you could do to a person, to banish them from their hometown or home city or the motherland. And it's very, very tough. But in London, I maybe naively, but we feel fairly safe. Again, obviously, there have been instances of poisoning of Russian opposition leaders or members in the West, but again, we feel safe, and London is home now. But it's a very sad thought that we all might never be able to go home, and that's unfortunately something that becomes more and more real, and something that we, I think, need to come to terms with.
Well, look, really interesting speaking with you, Tatiana. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
That's Tatiana Fokina, who is a friend of Alexei Navalny there, talking to us about what it's like to be a Russian dissident and how it can pretty much mean a death sentence. And I thought that was a very coherent analogy with Iran. And it's very easy for people to be like, yeah, why don't people just rise up? And then you see the brutality of an authoritarian dictatorship cracking down on people. Very interesting conversation there.